Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today's video is going to give you an update on an upcoming patch 922 and the dramatic changes it will make to a lot of the Soviet tanks. This patch will arrive before the big one, World of Tanks 1.0, which will come out in March. And as with the previous patches, Wargaming are going to be changing and moving different vehicles around, and so if you want to get your hands on them, now's your best opportunity, as you will be effectively picking up entire free tanks if you manage to unlock and purchase them within the time. So without further ado, let's take a look at what Wargaming are telling us about 922. Well, firstly, they talk about why they are making these changes, and it's basically because they're changing unpopular tanks, I guess, to spark an interest in them. So firstly, medium tanks, and no prizes for guessing that it's to do with the Object 430, the least popular of the tier 10 Soviet medium tanks. And what's really weird about this line is that you have rear-mounted turret medium at the 844, the 416, which is kind of a medium tank destroyer, and then the Object 432, which is a rear-turreted T-54, and then you get the Object 430 and it's a completely different tank and a different playstyle altogether. Wargaming are going to be moving the Object 430 down a tier, from tier 10 to tier 9, and putting the Object 430U in its place. Now, while we don't have many details, at least official ones, about the Object 430U, I can tell you it has got 160mm of upper hull armor, very nice angled side armor here, that if you angle it like this, you're still packing about 300mm of effective armor, 350 on the top plate, and it looks like it's got a T-62 A's turret. Even the cupolas on this tank are absolutely monstrous. And you combine this with a 122mm caliber gun, I presume, as it has 440 alpha and it fires 5.9 rounds a minute. Now, 5.9 rounds a minute, it's not exactly great, is it? When we look at something like the 121, that's firing 6.25 rounds a minute. And even a heavy tank like the 113 is firing just slightly higher than that at 6 rounds a minute, so it doesn't really feel like tier 10 medium tank DPM. But then again, when you have armor like this, do you really need tier 10 medium tank DPM? As long as you've got some mobility, it's going to be more or less a heavy tank. I think this vehicle will be a bit like a Soviet E50M, and we'll just have to see how much gun depression Wargaming are going to be giving it. But I wonder, how is this vehicle going to compete with the Chinese heavy tanks, you know, the WZ-111-5A and the 113, because really, they've already got this kind of playstyle. Slightly slower mediums with a little bit worse DPM that have great armor, and that's kind of exactly what the Object 430U is going to be like. But I think it just makes more sense for this thing to go in the tech tree. It's going to be branching off from the T-44 to get to the tier 9 Object 430, and then that'll lead on into the tier 10 Object 430U. And then it looks like in the future the Wargaming are going to add in an additional tier 10 Soviet medium tank, I guess, that will lead on from the Object 430 version 2. So here's the small print. If you have an Object 430 researched when update 922 is released, both the tier 9 Object 430 and the tier 10 will be researched for you. However, if you have the vehicle in your garage, you will have both the tier 9 Object 430 and the Object 430U added to your account. And so that effectively means that you're getting an entire extra tier 9 for free. And so it's definitely worth trying to get the Object 430 and purchase it before the release of 922. And then Wargaming go on to confirm that there will be a rear-mounted tier 10 Soviet medium tank going in after the Object 430 version 2, but no confirmation about what it's going to be or when we're likely to see it. So next up, a new heavy tank line. Now these Soviet heavies are going to have rear-mounted turrets starting at tier 8 with the ISM, which will lead on from the IS, and so I recommend that you turn off accelerated crew training in your IS so you can pick up this tank on release date if you're interested in that. So here's the tier 8. What's its armor going to be like? Should we just take a quick look? Lower plate, well, not that impressive. Upper plate, okay, 270, that's very good if it's not angling, and if you angle like this, now 284, it's rather decent. Bit of a cheek weakness there, but oh well. And turret-wise, a fairly decent turret, so it kind of looks like it's going to be a bit like a KV-4 with a standard IS-3 gun, but it's also going to be firing 5.1 rounds a minute with 390 alpha. And that's not bad considering the IS-3 is firing 4.5 rounds a minute. After the ISM is going to be the Object 705, a brand new tier 9 Soviet heavy tank, and then eventually you're going to be getting the top tier Object 705A. And here it is. It's, I don't know, you tell me, do you think it's a pretty looking tank? It looks like a bit of a weird one. Oh, well, from that angle it looks like an IS-7 that's got its turret turn the wrong way. Oh, so here's the armor model. Oh, wow. That turret looks like it could be absolutely incredible. Should we have a look? Oh, okay. Yeah, looks like we've got a bit of an IS-7 turret going on here, ladies and gentlemen. What about the upper hull? Upper hull? Oh, just 170 millimeters thick. What about the side cheeks here? Wow, nice beak. What about the lower plate? Well, the lower plate isn't exactly great, but it's a bit like an IS-4 and IS-7 there. Considering this turret is rear mounted, I presume you could side scrape round a corner like a boss. And whoa, look at the angled armor down the side, a lot like an IS-7. That's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt to try and penetrate. But one of the most crazy things about this tank is that it actually has a very large caliber gun. 152 millimeter to be exact, with 650 alpha damage, firing 3.3 rounds per minute with 2,450 hit points. And so that means the Object 705A isn't quite going to have that tier 10 tank destroyer alpha damage of 750 or even the E100's alpha damage of 750, but 650 puts it right in between something like a Type 5 heavy firing the non-derp gun, or alternatively the Panzer 7 with 560 alpha and those full 750 alpha damage guns. And so it looks like this thing could be a little bit of a beast and definitely worth maybe playing a few rounds in the IS between now and 922 to maybe start your grind up towards it. Next up, Wargaming are making changes to the T10. And I really don't know what Wargaming are talking about here. They say that it doesn't really fit in between the IS-3 and the IS-7. Now I understand that it's got quite a lot of mobility and maybe not that kind of IS-7 hull armor, but I think the T10 was a great tank, and for me at least it worked in between the IS-3 and the IS-7, but they're going to be replacing it with the Object 257, as we can see here in the tech tree. But another interesting thing that the T10 is actually going to get shifted down. And once again, Wargaming is saying that they're going to add in another tier 10 heavy tank that will lead on from the T10, so maybe you even want to uncheck accelerated crew training in the T10 there. But that won't be quite so important, and obviously do that in the Object 432 as well. But those two tier 10s, it doesn't look like they're going to be coming out in 922, but when you need probably about 200 to 300,000 experience, well, starting as soon as possible is the best thing to do, right? Okay, so what happens if you have the T10 in your garage? Well, if you have it researched, then the tier 9 Object 257 will be researched also. But if you have it purchased, then when 922 is released, then a tier 9 Object 257 will also be added to the account. But there's a couple of important bits of information because, of course, this gets a little bit confusing. What happens if you want to try and save up experience on your T10 to purchase the future tier 10 Soviet heavy tank that we don't know what it's going to lead on into, as we can see here? Well, if you've already researched the IS-7, then the experience will remain on the T10 so you can get a head start. However, if you haven't researched the IS-7, then when the T10 is moved to here, the research would actually stay on the Object 257 because I guess the people who were trying to grind for the IS-7 might be disappointed if all of their experience got moved down to the T10 for a vehicle they may or may not want in the future. But the bottom line is, if you're close to getting the T10, pick it up. You'll effectively get a whole extra tier 9 for free. And if you've already got a T10 and have researched the IS-7, then uncheck the accelerated crew training in it and save it up for the future possibility. Next up, Wargaming are addressing an alternative tank destroyer line, and they're saying that the vehicle parameter changes they made in update 920 took us nowhere. And the concept for this line will be high forward and backwards mobility combined with medium maneuverability, which allows them to quickly reach and occupy key positions and retreat back to safety. With good frontal armor but weak side armor, average damage per shot with a high reload time to compensate for the medium mobility and protection, with accuracy and aiming time balanced to make them effective at short to medium range. So basically they want to make the aim time long and the accuracy bad to stop them from sniping super effectively. And poor elevation angles due to historical design, okay. So what we're going to see here is that the Object 263 is actually going to move down from tier 10 to tier 9 and be replaced by the Object 2684. So as far as we can see for the Object 2684, it's got 650 alpha damage, fires 3.5 rounds a minute, but I'd just like to stress that all of this is subject to change. And let's take a look to see what the vehicle's armor is like. Well, lower plate armor. What? Sorry, what? 290 millimeters of raw lower plate armor? Okay, so you just don't angle, and all tier 8 and tier 9 tanks won't be able to pen you even with premium rounds. Okay, what about the turret armor? Well, that's great as well. What about the cupola? The cupola is still 250. Why put a weak point on top of the tank if it's not even really going to be a weak point? Side armor on the tank is still pretty good. It's not too shabby. It looks like the side armor is still 80 millimeters thick with some tracks behind it. We have no idea what the depression of the tank is going to be like. Well, it doesn't look like it's too bad here, but what about the elevation? Well, I thought they said it was going to have bad elevation angles. Anyway, everything's subject to change, but it doesn't look like this is going to have a turreted design, but quite a nice wide gun arc at least. And so let's check out the small print. If you have an Object 263 in your garage, then the Tier 9 Object 263 and the 268 version 4 will be added to the account. Okay, what about the SU-12254 though? It doesn't look like it's actually in the tech tree there. So apparently if you have an SU-12254 in your garage, then when update 922 is released, the Tier 9 Object 263 will be added to the account. Okay, but hold on. If you have an Object 263, then it's already going to be on your account. So does that mean that you're going to get the credit compensation? Possibly. I'll have to clarify this at a future date, but I expect that Wargaming will be giving you credit compensation for when they remove the SU-12254. But then again, when you look at it, if you've got the Object 263 already, you're kind of not losing or gaining anything. But if Wargaming do decide to not give us any compensation, then what stops us from selling the SU-12254 before the patch is released? But don't do that now. Let's wait for the test server and see how they're actually going to do the ins and outs. Nevertheless, this looks like a good opportunity to once again pick up an extra vehicle. Effectively, by having a Tier 9 and a Tier 10 tank in your garage, you'll probably end up with a Tier 9 and a Tier 10 tank, and also about a Tier 9's worth of credits to boot. And so all in all, that looks to be what is going to be happening to the Soviet branch in 922. And for me, I kind of like the look of it. Sure, I guess it's sad that the Object 263 isn't going to be the Tier 10 powerhouse that it was. And if you absolutely adored the playstyle of the Object 430, well, it drops down to Tier 9. But I think personally for me, I like the look of just more tanks, more content, more playstyles hopefully, and also the idea of just these two mysterious Tier 10s that may be coming in the future. Well, Wargaming have said will come in the future, it's just a case of when. And so I've got a little bit of a checklist here as to what you need to do to prepare right now for 922. Firstly, try and get your hands on the Object 430, where you'll effectively get a Tier 9 tank for free. Secondly, uncheck accelerated crew training in the Object 430 if you have it, so you can prepare for the future Tier 10. Next up, uncheck accelerated crew training in your IS, as we can see here, as it will be leading on towards the ISM. And also, if you can, try and purchase the Object 263 at Tier 10, so you'll receive the Object 2684 in your garage come release day, but also your SU-12254 that you had, but I presume that you're going to be getting the 3.5 million credits back for it. Effectively meaning that if you have purchased a Tier 9 and a Tier 10, you'll keep both of them, but get the credits that you spent on the Tier 9 back anyway. But I'd just like to clarify that I haven't been able to confirm that on the Wargaming website, but it really makes the most sense to me that that's what they're going to do. And so ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, it was useful to you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up, but if you absolutely hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about all of these changes. What are you most looking forward to? For me personally, I think it is the Object 430U. I hope it just plays a little bit differently to a 113, for example. And it's always very interesting for me to see how it's going to stack up to the 140 and the T62A. And also, what is this mysterious rear-mounted medium that they're going to be putting into the game eventually? Looks like there's lots of great content coming up if you are a Soviet tank lover. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.